I do want to mention that I've really been enjoying the participation. Y'all have been posting a lot on Facebook. Y'all have been tweeting now. There's been a lot of activity, a lot of great articles, some that I've actually posted to other groups that I belong to. I've enjoyed them that much, and I really appreciate how much time and effort that y'all have put into your discussions. Some of y'all are conversing quite regularly, so that's awesome. Like I said, if there's something that even a friendship can kindle out of this, that's kind of a cool thing in terms of what can be done for an online class. And I can think of no better class than a social media strategies class to be able to get that kind of bond, if you will, and understanding your own social communication between each other. So that's really cool. The other thing I'll mention is on As You Learn, there is a new blog post. So there are a couple really simple questions, but I do want you to take them seriously and look through them, really answer through them. And then there is also 3 additional readings. Now, the second question from As You Learn is going to be pertaining to that particular, the last additional reading on As You Learn is going to be pertaining to the last question on the blog. Sorry, I got my thoughts mixed up for a minute there. So those are 2 things that you're going to want to take a look at. The last article will be associated with the last question on the post, so that way you're not going to get confused by it or anything like that. So it talks quite a lot about endorsements on LinkedIn, because that's kind of our chapter that we're looking through this week. And I like this chapter because this actually does a little bit of personal branding. As some of y'all mentioned before in the comments about this idea of who we actually are as an online presence. And there have been people that have mentioned something to the effect of social media is almost a bit of your identity in a way that it's like your PR. It's your own personal brand and public relations of how you like to communicate yourself. And actually, the first additional reading really kind of comes play on that one. I'd encourage you to read that one. That one in particular is not, I don't think, as close as everything else when it comes to what we're talking about with strategic communication, but it still talks quite a lot about identity. And I think that's a very important segment to be looking at here. So what I'm showing you right now, and I'll just kind of dive right into it, is a little bit of LinkedIn. So this is my personal page here. If you ever want to connect or anything, this is not a ploy for me to get you to connect. Just giving you an example of what we're dealing with here. And, this talks quite a little bit about what we're going to be doing in this class in terms of creating one. Now, mine probably needs a little work. I don't update it as much as I do my resume or my Vita, but I try to keep it relatively up to date. I don't think some of my teaching is quite up to date, but other than that, I'm pretty sure I'm good to go here. Now, one of your articles talks about crafting a LinkedIn profile, and it talks a little bit about what you do as your profession. Now, again, since I have been doing a lot within advertising in the gaming industry, this is kind of the focus of what you're dealing with here in terms of myself in panels, in terms of myself at conventions. This is one of the things that I do quite a lot. So in many cases, I don't know that I would recommend my personal LinkedIn page. However, this is depending on what you do. And there's something about the thematic elements of your profession that comes into it. So I have a lot of students who have graduated and are working in big advertising firms, and they obviously have pictures with their business suits looking very, very dapper, which, again, for what they're doing makes a lot of sense. Whereas people who are art directors, for instance, at major ad firms, theirs are a lot different. I mean, I see on their cover photo, which you'd see somewhere around this area right here, someone has like a Wassily Kandinsky photo or art piece. That's what I meant. So the photo really does get this first impression. And then you get into your headline here. This really talks about what you do. Make sure, there we go. So this is just kind of a little bit about what I do as an advertising professor. So probably one thing that personally I ought to do is update a little bit in terms of some of the more recent stuff I've done. But yeah, this is what I do for teaching, and this is what I assist with when it comes to some areas for help. I've done some small consulting when it comes to a couple of these things here. Your experience, you can go down here. It talks about a little bit of what you've done. I'm kind of a professional academic in a lot of ways, but I have had some experience in other places doing other things in terms of columnists. I forgot to put my ski rep stuff up. But anyway, sales analyst, but a lot of what I've been doing is teaching as well as kind of being a professional student, if you will, here at North Dakota State. But one thing I always make sure that I do is I always put in projects, and this is kind of a cool thing that LinkedIn has done over the years. So I actually include not only the classes that I teach, so yeah, I haven't even gotten my spring schedule up. I need to do that. But, certain things that I'll show you right here. This is actually one of the pages we worked in for the Make-A-Wish Wish Fast Superhero 3K and 5K. I think they're on their 6th year now. We had a little news publicity about that in the local Fargo paper, which is really cool. Some people doing creative work for me. Again, these are all just small projects that we've worked in the past of research papers, advertisements, billboards. This was really cool that we got some billboard space for that. Some of the events that we do here, again, Barks and Brews. This is our 2nd year doing it, so our logo, if anybody is big into craft beer, you might know what that is in terms of our hops paw print here. But I always try to include some examples of student work that I've helped with to kind of get this out in the open in terms of some of the things that I do in this case. Education's real important. I've got one thing that I implemented myself. I probably should get rid of that. But, again, it talks about, where you went to school, one of the, what are some of the things that you've done within your particular area. And then, look at, what did you know about that? I went here once upon a time. This is actually kind of a cool feature within the education. And it really goes to show about some of the things that we do within social media. So I know one or two of you have selected some form of App State social media. And if you're doing this, one thing I would really suggest you do is check their LinkedIn, especially when it comes to education, because they've got a lot of really cool stuff in terms of what they do, in terms of what they post. This is a part of branding here. And it's a really neat thing about understanding a little bit more of the credibility of what you do, because we're in a day and age where, my students, when they go out from their undergrad and into their professional career, some of the things that they'll say is, I'm not sure about the credibility of this job call I got from an email. So I got to go on their LinkedIn page, or I looked at the recruiter that contacted me and look at their LinkedIn. So there's a lot of credibility that is associated with LinkedIn. And it's a nice thing for App State, for instance, here, to be able to do, to kind of say who they are, some news feed stuff about what they're doing right now, which is kind of cool. Job openings. So if anybody's looking at jobs around this area, not a whole lot. But I think the coolest one is the alumni tool. And I do take advantage of this every now and again. Because you can look through alumni here, and almost 83,000 alumni. So that's a pretty good market in terms of who is in the area who went to App State. Now, you will want to take one thing with a grain of salt. I've checked all the universities I've went to and several others. When they show where they work, the university will always be the number one thing. However, you can see Wells Fargo, Lowe's, Bank of America, a lot of North Carolina brands. Banking seems to be a common theme within Appalachian State. Many of our graduates are kind of Hickory, Illinois, Charlotte. I mean, again, this kind of seems obvious. You can see some of the people that are within this area. I won't go too much into that. But it does go into some of the contrast of other places. Oops, didn't quite get out of there yet. There we go. So, for instance, I also went to North Dakota State. I'm going to the alumni there. And Sanford helped Microsoft Target and Bobcat. Okay, that makes a lot of sense because Sanford is in Fargo, North Dakota. Microsoft has it's like their second biggest plant, oddly enough. One's in Washington State and the other's in Fargo, North Dakota. So, a little piece of trivia for there. Target is based out of Minneapolis. That makes sense. And then they've got a big one in Bobcat in Fargo. But you can see, again, all these make sense in terms of greater proximity here. So that is one of the tools you can use there. Oops. Which is pretty cool. The other thing you can look at in terms of skills and endorsements. Now, I've got some of the areas that I put in versus who I'm endorsed by. And I'm probably not endorsed by a lot of people just because I don't have a lot of students that I'm friends with, and the majority of the people when LinkedIn was a little bit bigger. I think it's still very big and it's used different ways, but the endorsement tools haven't been on my radar that much as of late. However, so to see a lot of things like teaching, PowerPoint, public speaking was a big one in terms of my endorsed skills. Well, a lot of that was because when I was teaching at Coastal Carolina, that's what I did. So, but these are some of the skills that I have down here. Honors, awards, publications. These can also work into projects, which are pretty cool. Following interest. And then you usually can have a summary as well to kind of craft in this case here. So the big thing is you want to have a couple things twofold. First and foremost, you want to have a lot of specificity in terms of what you've done, what you do, and really bring that to life on here. In fact, maybe they don't have it anymore. There used to be a bar that would say, these are the things that you need to do to finish your LinkedIn. And I usually followed by it pretty strongly, as this has always been I don't see it anymore, as this is kind of a cool thing to be able to understand a little bit about more of what your profile needs to get out there. So, but the other thing is who your connections are. And I don't have a whole lot of connections, 302. Now, granted, you may sit there and go, that's a lot in comparison to me, which if it is, sorry. But, when it comes to connections here, I try not to have too many. I try to have those that I'm very good friends with, or personal students that didn't quite want to friend me on Facebook, but still wanted to be a contact on LinkedIn. So these are all cases here that most of what you'll read in your articles is that bigger is not always better when it comes to your friend size. So you probably want to have a better quality than quantity in this case, because this can give you a little bit of more about who you work with and who you connect with. And I'd use a lot of these tools. Again, the alumni tool is a great one to use. So if you haven't created a LinkedIn account, I'd really encourage you to do so, to include the places that you work, the places that you go to school, because you never know what's going to come up. I have students that have been recruited through LinkedIn, and they've gained excellent employment. And so, I always make sure that people know that this is a strong tool, and it's in many ways just as good as a resume. Like I said, I keep all these projects that we do on my LinkedIn because I can send it to somebody. So if you don't have a website, for instance, this could be a real quick way to list this not only on your resume, but also a good thing to be able to do when you're marketing yourself, to be able to send things out. So anyway, that's all I'm going to cover over today. If you have any questions about LinkedIn, let me know in terms of setting your own site up. It's pretty easy to do, but as anything, it takes a while to maintain, but it can be a valuable resource. But again, if you have any questions, let me know. Make sure you go through the readings and get on your next blog post. Keep posting. I'm really enjoying reading them. I hope I try to get to all of them. If I don't, I do apologize, but I do want to address them because, again, there's a lot of good stuff out there, and I really appreciate y'all doing it. So y'all have a great day, and I'll probably talk to y'all tomorrow.